Oh yeah. So engage tank. Engage tank. So mouth the choke right here. Generally, engaged tanks don't need to be any sooner, earlier, or farther in than the mouth of the choke. Anytime you go in here, it's just to place your silence pull down and then dip out right away. Kind of dip out to the side. You can kind of pull the enemy and bait them into situations too. You're kind of like a bait tank. So you walk in here, you place your silence pull. They're going to be looking to punish you and pressure you. And you just slink out, and try to pull one or two into us. And then we can Q and auto attack him and then pressure him back out. And when he walks back out, we can get an engage on them. It's kind of like fives. If you think about it, it's the same premise, but just played out differently. So I'm in the mouth of the choke here. The enemy, when they're looking down at us, they're looking down. Their mouth of the choke is right here. Their tank line's going to be doing the same thing, situating up here, trying to pull us into the choke, deep into the choke, so they can get a fat engage on the way out. Their MDPS is going to be stacked up around here, and when they come through, they're not going to go into the center, into the dead zone, and then straight through. What they're going to do is they're going to come from this place, and they're going to slink around this corner, and they're going to try to come in like this. So if you know that that's where they're going to be going, then you can predict where they're going to be engaging by how early our tank line's playing, so how forward our tank line's playing. If our tank line is doing a lot of deep playing and overextending, they're going to be about here, which means that the enemy is only going to have to come across the crescent, hit here, and then back out, right? So that means that a silence pool has to be here, but our tank line shouldn't be playing so aggressive. They'll probably be playing like this aggressive, right? Less aggressive, but still extended. So they'll come in through there, same pathing, and they'll come in through, hit this, and then walk out, right? So this is where you're going to be placing the silence pool, right? So that you catch the front line as they walk in. The MDPS, the enemy MDPS, when they walk in to clap this, they got to go through here. So that means they either got to strike from here or go all the way through and strike from here or blow a cleanse on the silence pool, right? So then if we think that they're going to come all the way in deep, they're going to come all the way in like to here, to this line here, to get some clothies or something. This is where the air compressor is going to be. That means their MDPS will probably come no farther up than there, right? So if you want to make them extend here or go early and shy here. So this is where you kind of start doing, when you walk up to the choke in the very beginning, you start with silence pools on your side, so the enemy can't surprise and get you right away. And then as soon as you see they're playing pussy, playing scared or whatever, then you start creeping in, okay, so if they engage our tanks here, this is where my silence pool, right? And then they're still playing pussy, so you go in a little deeper and you go, okay, I'm going to play here while my D tank is trying to bait something out, right? And then I'm going to come back and rotate back out. I'm going to come back in. They still haven't, they're still playing scared. Now I'm going to go a little deeper and play here, right? So this is so that when the enemy gets their engage on us, they can't get us without like having a buffer, is what we'll call it, a buffer zone. So if you want to stall them out, say they're playing really scared, and you get to walk in for free, you can hit their RDPS who are trying to fire over this wall with a silence pull here. You can also hit their RDPS who don't want to come in right here, right? So they have to commit past the choke, which means it takes them 1-2 seconds to get around and back out. It takes them longer to get out, which means they stay longer in the choke, means we get a fatter clap, right? So we're always trying to think about that stuff as engaged tanks. So we back out here, the enemy is now pressing up, so we come back outside of the mouth of the choke, because the only reason we were there is to play silence pool and then pretend bait them on our way back and string them back out. But when we're outside of this, like our D tank is going to be mouth of the choke, we don't need to be playing up, we can be right here, because we're not really doing anything other than silence pool, right? And then just playing in the front with the tank armor. So our MDPS are probably going to be stacked right around here. In the beginning, they're going to be deep, right? And then as we work into this choke, the MDPS are probably going to position here, and this is where the RDPS is going to be, right? Once we start staging, like choking up on the choke. But in my opinion, if the mouth of the choke is here, this is where the D tanks are. Engaged tanks are just off to the side of that, right about here. MDPS is just off to the side of that, right about here. If this house wasn't there, we would be taking the space of the house. So engaged tank like about here, MDPS about here, and RDPS over here, right? In the very beginning. And then once we start stepping in a little bit to the choke, or we see we're going to be punching through, um, the RDPS, which was back here, is going to move up to here, and the MDPS who is here is going to move up to here. If we're going deep through the choke, you're going to have to walk in and choke up on the choke. So when you use all your stuff, you're already like so close that you can get over here in the amount of time that's required, right? So I come back here. This is for engage. So I'm sitting over here, I'm waiting for my CDs. So I'll talk about when we're getting engaged on. So all these silence pools were mostly for when we're getting engaged on to stop the enemy, because I have the opportunity to do that. But we can also, once we go in and let's say we're going to go into the dead zone, we do our air compress, we do our E into them, right? And then right after we just put a silence pool right down right after, right on top of all that, so that they can't cast their defensives to get out. Hopefully we caught them in the right amount of time. Silence pool laid on top, and they're stuck here, right? So for the engage, your silence pool goes in. So here we'll do an engage. So the silence pools in the beginning were defensive, right? So now we placed our last defensive silence pool, let's say right here. We're walking back to our position. We have 6 seconds because I'm not using the right food. If you're using the omelets, you have faster cooldown and faster cast speed, so you get the silences down faster. So silence has 0.6 seconds, right? So in order to get it to like 0.4 or something, you got to use food. So we walk up, we place that silence pool, we come back here. The guy's calling engage, we're stepping into the mouth of the choke. 5, step in 4, boots, clump, drop that damage, drop that damage. And when I do that, I place this on top of it, and then I start walking back, and I start looking to see how late and how snared we're holding up here. If we're staying here for a long time, this is a little too forward, but if we're staying here for a long time, then I'm going to place the Judy probably about here, or probably about here, try to cover the choke as much as possible. And then once we're walking back, all the engaged side, the D tank is going to be left here, walking the enemy down, trying to use the anti, right, using the CC to stop the enemy from engaging on us. So they will also be able to use the Judy. So Judy on defensive and Judy lining chokes is amazing. So like if we all go in deep and we engage deep into here, I as the engaged tank, I blow everything, there's nothing much I can do anymore. So I start walking out, right? Walk off to the side because I might still be getting focused. And then I come back kind of overlapping the center, and as we're still walking back, I'm placing these silence pools so the enemy doesn't engage from behind. And I'm looking to use my Judy as we're walking it back as well, walking it back, walking it back, walking it back. You know what I mean? I'm holding my position. I don't need to be front because that's D-tank, and everyone I'm letting them go by me as I'm trying to like just pressure, hold this pressure. Because if I stand here, the enemy doesn't feel like coming in, right? But as soon as I turn my back and run away, the enemy walks right in. As soon as I turn back, the enemy stops. That's one thing about like Albion or Zerging. It's like the ghost in Mario. When you're looking at it, it's scared, right? When you stop looking at it, it's confident and it follows you instantly. Just aggro is insane. The pressure is insane. But as soon as you turn back, the pressure is relieved. Now you're put pressure onto the ghost. You know what I mean? And he stands there. He's worried, right? So anytime you're actually looking at the choke, you want to do like this, right? So as much as possible, your back is not turned to the choke line, right? Because if you're doing this, right? Every time you turn back, the pressure's relieved. You're walking out, pressure's relieved, and your back's turned, which makes you less of a threat. So instead of that, you do like just crescent angles and try as much as possible to not be looking like you're walking away, right? So if you have to do something like this, come into the dead zone and then back out into the dead zone. If they engage over top of the defensive line right here, as soon as they do that, you're walking back out. Right? They start tracking you and following you to get to the MDPS. You just walk back into them. Because if they engage you, it's better than engaging everyone else. Right? And then we're going to count on the choke in 5, step in 4, 3, 2. So boots is 3, clump is 2, E is 1, and all the damage is dropped with it. And the silence pool comes right after the E is done. Right? So you do air compress, E, silence pool. And then walking it back out, Judy. You know what I mean? Or Judy back here, if we're all good and we walked it out good, I could place Judy kind of like shortstop position. This is the center, so it covers the tank line, and it also starts covering the shortstop, like support or frontline healers and stuff. So this time I'm going to use my Night Helm when I walk in. Alright, so we're engaging, step into the choke, in 5, in 4, in boots, in clump, and drop that damage. So 4 is Night Helm, so it gets in there. It's on 4, so it's not too early to give it away, but it's not later than 4 because you're already busy doing everything else. Right, so back here, when you step in, so you're positioned just off the front line, right? Off the defensive tanks as a shortstop, right? You got your little silence pools going in here. And when you wait, like so, I'll wait for it for 3. So we're calling in the gauge, so we're stepping in, stepping in. In 5, in 4 is knights. So when you're doing in 5 and 4, you need to be looking for the DPS, so you can give them all the knight. So we're looking, step in, step in, step in. You're trying to get in because you need to be first, but you also need to be given the DPS, the Night Helm, right? So we're sitting here in 5. So step in, step in, step in. Here, I'll come back here. So we're giving a wide mouth off the choke. D-tanks are in the mouth of the choke. We're sitting off to the side. All right, we're looking to engage. We're looking to counter here. So the enemy's engaging now, and we're looking to counter. Step in for it, step in for it. In 5, in 4, in 3, in 2, in 1. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to do extra shit to get everybody to have what they need. So if you got to come back because the DPS isn't on time, I mean, it is what it is. If you come back to meet up with the DPS, um, if you're still on time for the clump on 2 and the drop on 1, then everything is perfectly fine, right? But if you're not, then we got to talk to each other, right? Because you can't do much more than what I've just explained. For skills, we do Sacred Ground, Air Compress, and we take Stunning Strike because in the Zergs we don't spam enough, or we don't really spam through our energy that bad. For the Night Helm, 3rd skill and 1st passive. The chest piece, 3rd skill, 1st passive. And you take threat gen, so when you get knights or any PV mobs, you can steal that threat off your healer, but it generally doesn't work. You don't want to be on carry weight. You want to be on cooldown rate and rush. Rush for your engaged CC, right? Astral Aegis gives you a shitload of defense, that's why we use it. You want to use the Omelet, the Ava Omelet, because it does cast speed, cooldown, and defense. And that defense right there is 6.89. That's as much as, that's more than the chest offers, right? And the boots are actually, or sorry, the headpiece is like 2 point something, right? So that's like a chest and a headpiece is just in this food alone, right? And 76,000 tacked onto the entire build is not much, even if you bought 2 of them, you know what I'm saying? And mostly we use gig pots because immune to force movement effects is a Night Helm. The res pot doesn't have that, it's just CCR, increased CC resistance. So this is a free Night Helm, and that's why every DPS, pretty much everybody's on it. Yeah, that's Engage Tank, and maybe I'll redo it if it's not good enough. Thanks for coming.